I Sang by Danny Shylett. When I was 3, I snuggled into the cozy bed at Grandma's apartment in Brooklyn with my doll beside me. I loved sleeping over Grandma's house. The food was delicious, and the lullabies seemed to linger until the birds carried the melody into the next morning. Grandma sat beside me, swaying gently in her chair to the rhythm of a Yiddish lullaby about a kitten. "Did you sing that song to my mommy when she was 3?" I asked Grandma. "I sang," she said. Grandma's deep blue eyes sparkled with memories. "When your mommy was 3, we traveled across the sea to become immigrants in a new country." She covered me with a soft blanket and gave me a kiss on my kepi. This song made her feel safe and loved. I knew I had the best grandma in the world. When I was 5, Grandma took my little sister and me out for ice cream to celebrate my birthday. Drops of melted ice cream dotted the table in the ice cream parlor because Grandma let us get sugar cones. Grandma's cheeks were as pink as my peppermint ice cream as she told the story of the day I was born and how she felt when my daddy called her with the news. "What did you do?" I asked Grandma. "I sang," she said. Grandma clasped her hands together in front of her heart. "I couldn't hold my joy inside and sang every happy song I knew." She smiled and helped my sister wipe her sticky chin. "Someday you will know why having happy, healthy grandchildren is such a victory." I knew I meant the world to Grandma. When I was 7, I burst through the door of my grandparents' apartment and ran straight to their tiny kitchen, where Grandma was humming and stirring a pot of chicken soup for the holiday at sundown. Grandpa and I had just climbed all the way up the 393 steps to Lady Liberty's crown, and I couldn't wait to share all I saw. Grandma's head nodded as I described the view and recounted what Grandpa had told me about when they came to America through Ellis Island. "Grandpa said that at first they didn't believe you were Jewish. What did you do to prove it?" I asked Grandma. "I sang," she said. Grandma dried her hands on a dish towel and placed one gentle palm on each of my cheeks. "I sang every Hebrew prayer and blessing I could remember with a trembling voice, hoping they would believe me." She tousled my hair. "I had blonde hair like you, and the officer was afraid I was a German girl trying to sneak in with the refugees. Imagine." I knew Grandma made this new world better. When I was 9, I had a fever, and Grandma came to take care of me. She brought me apple juice, and we giggled together about the playful way she pronounced the name of the brand with her Eastern European accent. Grandma's eyes danced with mischief as she contorted her mouth to repeat the popular American words that tangled her tongue. "How did you learn English anyway?" I asked Grandma. "I sang," she said. "Oh, American music was beautiful back then, not like the noise on the radio today. I sang every song I heard, and the music helped me learn the meanings of the words." She put a thermometer under my tongue and looked at her watch. "If you think the way I talk is funny, I can try to teach you to speak Yiddish. Or even harder, Polish! Oi!" I knew no one in the world had a laugh like Grandma's. When I was 11, I came home from school and collapsed on the couch in a flood of tears. A mean, jealous girl at school had called me a brainiac and stolen my favorite pen. Grandma sat down carefully beside me and told me she understood exactly how I felt. "How?" I sobbed. "What did you ever do that made bullies jealous?" I asked Grandma. "I sang," she said. Grandma's pale brow furrowed with worry, and she dabbed at my hot tears with a cool handkerchief that smelled like roses. In my little town in Poland, the Jewish children had to sit squeezed together like sardines on a hard bench in the back of the schoolhouse. But when it was time for music, the teacher called me up to the front of the room and made me sing for the whole class because I had such a voice. Grandma leaned in closer. The teacher told all the kids that they shouldn't let a Jewish girl show them up. The bullies never let me forget it. I knew the world was unfair to Grandma. Jeder zeigt euch ihre Miene, wenn sie dampft in die Träne. Mein Mama. When I was 13, I became a bat mitzvah and read from the Torah in front of my whole synagogue and family. I sang a song from a Broadway show in honor of another 13-year-old girl in the USSR who was not allowed to study Hebrew or become a bat mitzvah. Grandma sat in the front row of the sanctuary, weeping silently across a smile. Afterwards, she told me how proud she was, because as a young teenager, she also spoke out for freedom for those who were persecuted. "Really? How?" I asked Grandma. "I sang," she said. "I belonged to a group of young people, a little like the Girl Scouts today. We met secretly in the woods near my town and sang song after song about justice and our hopes to someday make it to the land of Zion." She held my hand tightly, and I could feel her tremble. And here you are, singing and chanting Torah and standing up for your beliefs. I could not be more proud. I knew that the beliefs Grandma and I shared could change the world. When I was in high school, I took a class in world history. I had to write a paper on World War II and interview someone who was impacted directly by the war. Grandma's face was solemn and pained as she told me the truth I'd been too young to know. This same woman who kissed my boo-boos had endured ghettos, bone-breaking labor camps, and a death march. "How did you ever survive the Holocaust?" I asked Grandma in awe. "I sang," she said. "In the pitch-black barracks at night when all the girls were sick and starving and thought they'd never last another day, I sang to give them hope." She ran her finger over the faded blue-black numbers on her arm and stared far away as she spoke. "A guard told me once that they made a pact not to shoot me because then they would have nothing but moaning to listen to in the dark. Now I know the songs helped me survive. Then I just sang because I still could. I knew that even the darkest days in the world could not silence Grandma. When I was in college, They opened a museum in Washington, D.C. to be a living memorial to the Holocaust and preserve human dignity. My grandmother was invited to attend the dedication as a guest of honor, and I was there by her side. Grandma listened to all the speakers and dignitaries with reverence, but her eyes closed and she placed one hand on her heart when Elie Wiesel shared his moving story and avowed the importance of remembrance. "How did you find strength to heal after the liberation?" I asked Grandma. "I sang," she said. "Every Yom HaShoah, I sang the hymn of the partisans. Every year on Israel's Independence Day, I sang Hatikva, and on July 4th, I sang the Star-Spangled Banner. Every Shabbos, I sang the blessings over the food that I never again took for granted." She touched my face and looked me straight in the eye. "But more important than anything else, I sang lullabies to you and your sister and your cousins, because the best revenge is happy grandchildren." I knew Grandma was the wisest woman in the world. There were promise and the courage yet was found. When I got married, my fiancé and I assembled a choir of all our musical friends to sing songs from both of our families' traditions in harmony during the ceremony under the chuppah. Grandma sat dressed in rich autumn colors and gold jewelry and swayed to the music of the Yiddish and Celtic tunes. Afterwards, she teased me, asking why she wasn't asked to join the choir when she had been asked to participate at my sister's wedding. "Wait a minute," I said. "What did you do at my sister's wedding?" I asked Grandma. "I sang," she said. "Remember, at the party, I made up a funny song to the tune from Tumbalalaika, telling the whole story of how your sister met her husband." She chortled as she spoke. All the guests laughed and laughed at how I made the rhymes and the story come out just so. I knew Grandma's spirit could make any party in the world come to life. When my daughter was 4, she snuggled into her cozy bed with her stuffed animal beside her. Together, we read her favorite bedtime story, recited a silly poem about a cow, and sang lots of lullabies. The last one was in Yiddish, and it was about a kitten. I kissed my daughter's kepi. "Your great-grandma used to sing that song to me when I was a little girl, and to your bubby when she was young," I said. "You're named after my grandmother because she was such a wise, strong, kind woman. She died the year before you were born." "What did you do when she died?" my daughter asked me. "I sang," I said. "I went to the hospital when she was very sick and sang every song she loved that I knew. I sang love songs and lullabies and prayers and Broadway and songs of justice. I stood by her bedside, held her fragile hand, and sang until I couldn't sing anymore." I paused and looked at my daughter's awe-struck face, afraid I had said too much to someone so young. "Wow," she said, "you really loved her. Will you sing all those songs for me tonight?" she asked. My daughter giggled, and her eyes danced. with a familiar mischief. And I knew that even when the world seemed dark, my memory of Grandma would be for a loving blessing of laughter and song. Mit scheine blue eigalech, amalech umulech ein.